Hi, welcome to day 4 of what I am calling today the anatomy of anxiety and sacred self-care. The whole idea about this is diving into today on this day 4 of a series of taking you behind the scenes of creating my first ever online course, Gut Health Mastery, into this whole layer of healing the gut that is so fundamental that so many people are overlooking and so many people are missing out on. And this has everything to do with anxiety, nervous system dysregulation, and how those play a huge role in actually the health of your gut. So if you're not familiar with the term nervous system dysregulation, right, you've probably heard of anxiety, I'm sure you've heard of stress, you've heard of overwhelm, you've maybe heard of burnout, right? Nervous system dysregulation actually refers to being in a chronic state of what is known as fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. When we look at our nervous system and how it's built, we know today that there are two main phases that our nervous system can be in, and in fact, we're always constantly cycling between the two. And that is the parasympathetic and sympathetic response. It's a little bit more complicated than just saying sympathetic responses within the nervous system are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. This is actually when we're in a dysregulated sympathetic state. Because if you are doing activities, if you're going to the gym, if you're going on a walk, if you are doing logical processing, if you're doing problem solving, communicating, all of that also involves your nervous system being able to be active, alert, and doing something, right? That can also be considered a sympathetic response. And that's actually something a lot of people don't understand. There's a healthy sympathetic response and there's an unhealthy sympathetic response, especially when, and we can even say fight, flight, freeze, and fawn are not actually unhealthy responses from your nervous system. They're actually there to keep you safe. They are biological, they are evolutionary, they have been with us for forever. And let's be real, if you didn't have the ability to have your hand on a fire and sense that, and sense, whoa, I need to change this, I need to take my hand off this fire, or if you were crossing the street and there's a car coming, you saw the car's not slowing down, and that didn't trigger something inside of you to say, oh, I need to get out of the way, then we probably wouldn't have lasted this long as a species, right? So it's actually important in terms of our evolutionary progress and our survival to have those responses. But chronic dysregulation, chronic nervous system dysregulation, is when those responses don't necessarily turn off. And that's a bit of what I'm going to explore today, of why those responses don't turn off, actually based on our anatomy. So what's going on within your body that is creating a feedback loop of anxiety that is really hard for a lot of people to break. Before I get there, I wanted to also share about the other side, the flip side of this nervous system phase, which is the parasympathetic response. When we talk about the parasympathetic response, we're talking about, you may have heard, rest and digest, but once again, it's a little more complicated. Essentially, our body has these two phases in which, as I said, sympathetic involves doing. And that's actually when your cells are using their energy to output, to create some sort of action in the world, or whether your cells are coordinating together, or just say, for example, you have some physiological process that needs to go on, like digestion or like breathing, right? There's actually needs to be signals that are going between cells that are signaling, hey, we're doing something right now. When we look at the other side of that, think about when you sleep. When you sleep, your cells get busy to work with dividing, with taking out the old cells, with dissolving and in consuming and destroying the cells that no longer are healthy or no longer are strong or no longer are needed. So there has to be this constant renewing of your body, and that actually happens in the parasympathetic space. Because obviously, if you're thinking about cells trying to be active and doing stuff, outwardly, it's hard for them to then be focusing that energy inwards just on your cells and on reorganizing all of that. So the parasympathetic response is actually what's most involved in reorganizing all of your cell's tissue and ensuring the longevity and the health of your tissue, right? Which is a more internal turning process. That, in and of itself, we then process oftentimes or talk about, discuss as rest and digest, because these are two really fundamental and easy to connect with things that we all live day to day. We know that there comes a time where your body asks for rest, and we know that there comes a time when your body needs to digest, right, once you've eaten your food. The thing is, most people who struggle with gut health struggle with that phase, struggle with the digestion phase. So if you've been struggling with symptoms like bloating and gas or abdominal pain or even constipation, any functional gut disorder, any digestive or motility issues, right? Like just feeling slow or heavy in your gut. If you've been having acid reflux or even the wanting to have nausea or acid coming up, GERD, or any diagnosed chronic issue within the gut. Or even if you're struggling with anxiety, with sleep, with ruminating thoughts, with stressful thoughts, all of this likely is connected to not being able to spend enough time in that rest and digest space, right? Because it's rest, it's digest, and it's also the process phase, right? We can think about it as a processing phase. So if you're never able to process what's going on outside of you, what's going on in your life, and what's coming into your body as sensory stimuli through your eyes, through your ears, through your skin, or even into your mouth as food, if you're not able to process that, well, yes, it's going to start creating issues. Part of those issues has to do with the fact that you are sharing, as I talked about yesterday, your body space with trillions of other living beings, which is your gut microbiome. So that's to say, issues like gas, like bloating, even like acidity to some degree, we could talk about that later, but mostly like think of gas and bloating. What is even causing that? The fact is, you've maybe ingested some food that is now processing in your gut, it moves into your intestine, and in your intestine, because your body hasn't digested and broken it down enough, the bacteria in your gut actually get to that food first, start to break it down, and basically that process is a fermentation process. If you've ever tried fermentation, or if you're familiar with fermentation, how it works is it's when microbes, whether those are bacteria or yeast or fungus, right, some other type of fungus other than yeast, are actually breaking food down. And what happens, they start to get bubbly. Those bubbles is what causes the sensation of feeling really bloated, really full, and also then later causes gas. So if you're experiencing those things, right, it's a sign that maybe your digestion and that digestive process isn't working optimally. And so how can we actually help improve that? One huge major way has to do with working with the parasympathetic responses and the sympathetic responses, especially when those sympathetic responses, the fight, flight, freeze, chronic stress, chronic overwhelm, chronic adrenal fatigue, all of that then affects the gut in a way that it cannot then anatomically, physiologically do its job. So I wanted to talk about, when I was talking about the anatomy of anxiety, what actually is involved physiologically, talking about organs and muscles and nerves, in terms of what you're going to be able to digest. We all know the diaphragm is this thing that, is here underneath our lungs, right? And it is what dips down, reaches down in order to fill up your lungs like balloons. And then it contracts upwards to actually empty out your lungs. And in order for it to do that process, it has to receive signals from your nervous system. The two main nerves that you need to know when it comes to diaphragm actually pass through the neck and up to the brain. And these two nerves, one is called the phrenic nerve. And that's the nerve that's actually responsible for contracting the diaphragm, which is when that muscle turns on, it pulls down, and that is actually then what allows you to take a deep breath, a deep inhale. That's the phrenic nerve. The phrenic nerves runs through diaphragm, connects to your heart, and then runs up through the cervical vertebrae. The vagus nerve is another nerve you may have heard of if you've ever learned about nervous system regulation. And this nerve actually runs and connects the brain to all of the other major organs in the rest of your body. So it is the biggest, longest, thickest nerve in your body, and it literally connects all of your major glands like thymus gland, thymus, thyroid, connects the lungs, connects the hearts, reaches into your liver, your spleen, your stomach, your intestines, your colon. It literally reaches into all of that and is also connected to your diaphragm. Why are these two nerves important, and why is the diaphragm important? Well, because here we're talking about rest and digest, and what even puts rest and digest within your nervous system in the same category? It has everything to do with the health and the motility of your diaphragm. So when you think about anxiety, oftentimes what happens is we get in this state where we are having shallow breaths. We may have shortness of breath. Oftentimes, we're doing something known as clavicular breathing, which is when you're using this part of your chest to breathe, right? It's these short, fast inhales into the upper chest, and it's not reaching further down into the belly. If you've ever taken a yoga class, or if you've ever, done some meditation or guided relaxation, you've likely practiced at some point or heard of something called diaphragmatic breathing. Diaphragmatic breathing is when you're actually breathing deeper down into your belly, activating the diaphragm at a deeper level instead of using the muscles up here. So this is important because there's actually muscles here in the neck, deep in the neck, called the scalene muscles. Those muscles connect here, the skull, and through the neck, through the cervical spine and vertebrae, into actually the first few ribs. They connect down here. What happens is when those muscles contract, they can help lift the rib cage, and that creates a space where we can get a little more breath in. This becomes complicated though, because essentially part of what happens for so many people today, especially people who work often at computers, turning my head side so you can see, is this posture, right? The thing is, when we're in this posture, reaching the head forward, the muscles of the front of the neck, particularly the scalenes that I just mentioned, become shortened, they become tight. What happens when those muscles then become tight is they're quicker to fire, right? They're kind of always on if you think about them being tight. So what happens then is if these muscles are tight and tense, they're going to actually draw you more often into a state of clavicular breathing than diaphragmatic breathing. The result of breathing the same way you would breathe automatically if you were experiencing some external circumstance triggering your anxiety, the result of that is a feedback loop to your brain that in fact, whether or not there's an external circumstance causing your nervous system to be dysregulated or to feel unsafe or to enter fight, flight, or freeze, there's a feedback loop in your body in that moment. If you're breathing in that shallow, fast way, that stressed out way, that non-diaphragmatic breathing way, that there's a threat, that your body needs to be ready and prepared for a threat. The thing is, in order to then shift that anatomy, in order to shift that process where your nervous system is receiving signals from your own body that you should be stressed out, that you should be in some fight, flight, or freeze response, and oftentimes that sends your mind into this loop of anxiety, looking outside for what it could be, right? Whether it is your job, whether it is money, whether it is your digestive issues, whether it's something about your health. Your brain, its job is to try and create a map of the world, a map of your reality. So when your brain is receiving these signals from your actual body that you are in this fight, flight, freeze response, it's going to try and search for an answer outside of you. And if it can't find it outside of you, it will often turn to you to try and give us that negative self-talk or that ruminating. So that's a bit of what causes that feedback loop for anxiety. And also why then actually being able to breathe and connect to your diaphragm then opens up a different response where your body understands I am not threatened. We get to stretch out, lengthen, and soften these muscles here in the neck. And you're actually lengthening through the diaphragm to get a fuller, deeper, slow, smooth breath. There's different studies out there that we can look at. And one I was looking at actually with UCLA, the University of California, Los Angeles, that was talking about how diaphragmatic breathing is actually beneficial for digestive issues, like everything I mentioned, abdominal bloating, abdominal pain, constipation, enhancing digestion, motility, functional gut disorders, GERD, regurgitation, and even visible abdominal distension. Also beneficial in this same study for anxiety, depression, regurgitation, I guess that's more of a physical thing, sleep, and stress disorders. So, if you're talking about wanting to improve any of those symptoms, if you've been struggling with any of those things, one of the biggest things you could do is actually learn the anatomy of what can benefit me to actually move out of this space. Part of the reason that this diaphragmatic breathing benefits us is the nervous system connection that I just talked about, of being able to actually send a new feedback loop to our brain and to the rest of our nervous system that in fact right now you can stay in a place of parasympathetic response or of rest and digest. If you're in a constant state of nervous system dysregulation, your body never sends the signal to digest. And I really want that to land for you. If you have any anxiety, depression, or mental health struggle, if you struggle with feeling grounded in your body, if you struggle with what feels like the hamster wheel of thoughts, if you struggle with rumination, if you struggle with self-doubt, if you struggle with fears and worries that keep you up at night, there is no way that can be happening and optimal digestion can be happening at the same time. If optimal digestion is not happening at the same time, then you will never get the nutrition you want, and your body will continually go deeper into this state of scarcity at the cellular and nutritional level that once again creates this own feedback loop that there's a threat to your well-being. So it's really this downward spiral that we need to be able to hack and start to shift through self-care practices. Before we move on to I'm going to share with you guys a self-care practice today that takes about 3 minutes that is so easy. It's free, because oftentimes I feel like self-care has been branded and sold to us as this expensive, I need the latest, Bath and Body Works, salt and sugar scrub with all this artificial fragrance oils and perfumes in it to make me feel like a luscious goddess, right? But you don't necessarily need all of those things in order to care for yourself. So I'm going to share with you in just a bit this 3 to 5 minute practice. So stick around for that practice because it helps regulate the nervous system, helps benefit digestion. But I wanted to talk about too how the diaphragm itself, if you look at the anatomy of all of the digestive organs, the stomach and the esophagus actually passes through the diaphragm. So if there's tension in the diaphragm, then it can actually directly create tension in your stomach. And also, it's involved in this pumping motion because, as I mentioned, it extends downward whenever you inhale, and then it contracts back up when you exhale. What this also does is it actually creates something known as peristalsis. Peristalsis is when there is movement in your gut. So if you've ever thought about how, those days when you're hungry or something's up in your gut and there's all this gurgling and this moving, or even when it's finally time to go to the bathroom, for a lot of people, say you have that first cup of coffee and you get that sense of there's pressure down there, we've got to go. Your diaphragm is actually hugely involved in that process because as it extends down, it creates pressure within the gut to then get all your organs moving. And if the organs can't move because you're not breathing using the diaphragm, you're breathing up here, then there's no motility happening in your digestive organs. And so the actual digestive part is not able to fully do its function, not able to fulfill its role. So that's a big part of why all of this links together, right? This diaphragm. I'm a big nerd of anatomy. I think it's a big part of understanding healing involves actually understanding our body and how it works. If we don't understand our body, then it's kind of difficult to understand why certain things work, and it's kind of hard to connect to the motivation as to why we should incorporate certain things, right? So many people are so quick to reach for these quick fixes, right? We want some supplement, we want some pill to ease our nausea or to ease our acidity, right? We want some antacid for our acidity. We want some fiber or some laxatives for our constipation. We want these quick fix things. But the reality is the quickest fix you could ever use is not going to be some external thing. The quickest fix you could do is do something, as I would call a sacred self-care practice, where you actually create a sense of safety, of pause, of calm, and of well-being in your nervous system. That is going to be the quickest fix, 100% of the time, every single time, to actually get your body into a healthier rest and digest state. And if you're not in that state, it doesn't matter what supplement you take. It doesn't matter what pill you take. It doesn't matter how much fiber you eat. It doesn't matter how many probiotics you're supplementing with. Because if your digestive organs themselves never get the signal to turn on their powers and their juices and their job, then that other stuff is just contributing to the problem. It's just floating around down there with the rest of it all. And that's why so many people struggle for so long and never get relief. Because they're going up this route that is one-sided and that totally actually misses the problem. Because this is the thing. If you have some degree of nervous system dysregulation, some unhealed trauma, post-traumatic stress, chronic burnout, anxiety, overwhelm, depression. That is part of the problem of what's going on in your gut. 100%. It will create problems in the gut. And you know this because when you've experienced anxiety, you either do one of two things. You either reach for food to try and eat your feelings, or you have no appetite at all, and you start to feel a little nervous or a little heavy or not great in your gut. There's something going on in your gut that doesn't feel quite right? So the thing is, if stress to your nervous system is part of the problem, it's part of the problem of your digestive issues, it has to at least be part of the solution. Has to be. So I wanted to just talk quickly before we get into our actual self-care practice about what self-care practices can be, what they can look like, and also something that I consider to be actually like the number one most important self-care practice we could do. Right? I kind of touched on this, but I just want to go a little deeper, and then we'll get into the practical aspect of this, where we get to practice this together. So oftentimes we're taught that self-care needs to look like I said, some luxury skincare, right? Because our health is equated with beauty or our fitness, right? But it's not necessarily equated with our sense of well-being inside, right? You could actually look very beautiful on the outside because you've bought all the expensive creams, but your nervous system can still be very dysregulated. You might have a nice body on the outside, but you're struggling with gastritis or colitis, right? Because the self-care is not actually lining up inside, right? You're doing these things, you're doing these practices, but they're more fitness practices or beauty practices. They're not necessarily actually self-care. Because let's break that down. What is the self, right? Is it just your body? Are you just your body? Are you just your muscles? Are you just the wrinkles on your skin or how supple your skin looks? Or are you more close to your experience of being in your body, your experience of being alive, your personal quality of life, right? Whoever is experiencing that is much closer to your sense of self, of who you are, right? It's not just the external thing. So if that's the case, self-care actually needs to be caring for that version of you. It needs to be caring for you, your needs, your wants, your dreams, your purpose, right? That's what I would call, the different layers. I touched on this a bit yesterday, right? The different layers of your experience. Your physical body has needs. If you don't care for them, there's no way your body will actually give you a feedback loop of well-being, of contentment, of feeling healthy, of feeling strong, of feeling good, of looking good. When we talk about mental or emotional levels, right? What thoughts you have, how good it feels to think your thoughts, how good it feels to be in your mind, alone, quiet, all by yourself, whether that feels comfortable or uncomfortable. What it feels like with your emotions, to sit with those, to process those, to feel those, right? Do you have an experience of being alive that is one that you feel you're getting the most out of? And that doesn't necessarily just mean being happy all the time, right? But how you're processing your emotions, how you're living with your emotions, how you're feeling your own process of being alive. All of that has to do with your health. And, if we wanted to talk about spiritual health, I would just add, you may not be a believer of spirit or spirituality, but for me, I would just define spiritual health as, well, how connected right now on a scale of 1 to 10 do you feel to your purpose? Do you feel to your passions? Do you feel to your dreams? Because for me, that has to do with the fact that you are more than just your physical body. You're more than just a mind that's thinking some thoughts. There's something inside you cannot change that has a drive and a will to be here and a desire to create and a desire to live certain things. And you can't change it, right? That to me is your spirit. That to me is what part of you came into this physical body and you're stuck with it, baby. You got to learn to just ride the wave and work with that to your greatest ability, to love that, to love your journey. So for me, it's that, how are you tending to your dreams, to your purpose? Because if you're not tending to those, what happens? You start to feel stuck. You start to feel stagnant. You start to feel unheard or unseen. Sometimes you start to project that onto your relationships or onto your work. But the reality is, And sorry if this is a little stingy or owie, but it's you who's not meeting those needs. You can't blame anybody else for the actions that you've decided to take. So your spiritual evolution then involves what steps you're taking to reach into that toolbox of greater well-being from the place of working towards your purpose, working to connect with yourself at that deeper level. I think there's a lot within the self-care world, and we could even say the Ayurveda world and then the yoga world that, of course, there are some core self-care practices I could talk about that changed my life, but they're kind of boring. I mean, I think we all know, for example, we've all heard of a morning ritual, right? There's everything from what is it? Think about 7 habits of highly effective people, right? Or even maybe more witchy stuff of I get up and I stretch and I do breath work and I journal, right? All this personal development world. There's so many ideas of having this ideal optimal morning ritual because it sets you up for the rest of your day. Okay, can be helpful, for sure. Mindful eating, right? Wanting to chew your food, eat slowly, connect with your food. As I teach in Gut Health Mastery, being able to actually understand your body type, your metabolic type, what your body processes well and does not process well, beyond just food allergies and beyond, food intolerances. What is your body's metabolism able to process, and what is your body's metabolism asking for right now to achieve a greater state of balance, right? That can be part of mindful eating. And many people aren't necessarily eating in that way because we don't know how to connect with our bodies in that way. We don't know what our body's asking for because we've never been taught a framework to understand it, right? In Gut Health Mastery, we go deep into that, and that's actually the basis from which you then make your grocery lists, start prepping food, start to do your meal prep, start to make all of this easy so that you can save time and energy and a lot of thought and processing power along the way once you finally know how to listen to what your body needs and what it's asking for. Of course, we can talk about meditation, right? Slowing your mind. Any practice that is slowing down your mind, allowing your mind to process, allowing you to become more aware of what's going on in your thoughts so that your thoughts themselves don't have to continue to be triggers for your nervous system feeling anxious. What do I mean by that? You could right now think about your worries and your stresses and your problems. You could think about all the things you don't have enough of. You could journal about how you don't have enough money, how you don't have enough time, how you feel behind, right, on your dreams, like everybody else is advancing and you're not making it. You could tell all these really crappy stories about yourself. And tell me, are you going to feel good? No, right? You're going to feel kind of mopey and maybe a little sad, right? Thinking about all these things. The thing is, we get so stuck in thinking in these ways because we literally have neurological pathways in our brain that get wired deeper and deeper and easier to go down every time we think those same thoughts. So rumination is really hard to break out of when you're not having these supplementary practices like working from your gut, like regulating your nervous system, because you can sit and you could just actually be meditating and continue to ruminate, and you're not necessarily moving out of that direction or out of that state of being that is very stuck in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. That's actually one of, talking about fawn we can consider like people pleasing, right? People think about why don't people just leave abusive relationships? Well, it's really hard because you have wired, your brain has become so wired, you haven't necessarily wired it, but your brain has become so wired to expect a certain set of circumstances. And then it becomes really difficult to break out of that, right? Any sort of movement practice for that reason, for a lot of people with nervous system dysregulation, is so fundamental. It's why somatic practices, moving your body, shaking, actually having physiological expressions of your emotions, releasing those, riding that wave, feeling the emotion, feeling your body, letting the emotion come and pass and crest and cry and scream, do all those things. All of that can be really healing for your nervous system because otherwise that energy is just trapped in your nervous system, creating a feedback loop, right? This is a huge thing for anybody who has experienced developmental, intergenerational trauma, sexual trauma, right? Verbal, emotional abuse of any kind in any relationship or in any environment. All of that creates impacts on the nervous system that oftentimes lead us into a more shut down state or into a very reactive state. And in fact, it's actually by working at the somatic level, which is working with your felt sense of your body, that allows you to process those triggers in a different way and to create an actual new physiological sense of well-being in your body. So all of those things, super helpful, love them. But if I had to leave you with one thing today to think about of like, okay, like that's great, a laundry list. Like what of those things did you not know? I mean, you may not have heard the word somatic before, right? But you've heard like, oh, I should get my steps in, or I should exercise today. Oh, I probably should try meditation, or I should try journaling. Oh, I should eat healthy. And, maybe I should try a morning routine or habit, I should stick to new healthy habits. All of those, like we know, we've heard them before. So like, what's new? One thing I want to share is how we relate to imperfection. I think this really underlies like the most fundamental thing you could do for the wellness of your nervous system, fundamentally. And because it has to do with so many people, we hold ourselves to this standard of perfection, which involves what we should be, which involves societal standards. So some standard we just at some point agreed that we should hold ourselves to based on, what our parents wanted from us, how our parents treated us, based on our direct environment. Could be how your teachers treated you. Could be how your peers treated you growing up, right? Social pressure, peer pressure. It could be other things you learned from like magazines or television or today's day and age, things we're absorbing from social media or podcasts or the immense information overload that exists, right? We have this standard, especially with healing, I think, and especially with nervous system regulation, especially with overcoming trauma, especially with yoga, especially within healing your gut and nutrition, right? All of these things that have to do with the health, wellness, well-being world, there is this immensely high bar of perfection that so many of us see outside of us, right? Like, oh my gosh, this person has like this perfect vegan food prep the whole week and they're eating so healthy and oh my gosh, it's so overwhelming. I should be like that, but how do I even start, right? Or oh my gosh, that person has the perfect healthy body and I'm over here and my back aches, my knees ache, and I don't know what to do. My joints feel terrible, so I don't even know where to start. So I'm just not gonna do anything, right? That's the thing. When we hold ourselves to this standard of perfection, it keeps you from taking action. When you hold on to perfection, you will never move in the direction of what you want. Because you already have it hardwired into your system that anything you do, no matter what you do, will never quite be good enough. So in this case, when we're talking about the nervous system, if we have this unhealthy relationship with perfection, how we embrace the imperfect is actually then a reflection of our capacity to stay and feel present. And your capacity to stay and feel present in the moment, feeling your body, feeling sensations, just feeling what's going on, just being real with what's going on, not projecting out into the future, not projecting into the past, not projecting something that's not happening right here, right now. That is a direct reflection of your nervous system's state of regulation or of dysregulation. Fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. If we talk about fight and flight, in this case, fight in your self-talk, your internal dialogue, can often look like those ruminating thoughts, can look like blame, can look like anger, can look like frustration, can look like complaints because you're complaining against the system. You wish the system were different. The system and you are racing to see who is the victim, right? You're in this constant race towards victimhood whenever we're in that fight state. Flight state, could be these self-talks where we're actually just sort of like, I would even say like blaming, right? Like we're kind of placing, once again, in this victimhood, the blame outside of us. Like it's always something out there, which means we're actually we're fleeing from our own responsibility in the situation. When it comes to freeze, this actually, I think, can look a bit more like, always feeling tired, always having brain fog, always feeling lethargy, feeling unmotivated, right? There's actually frozen energy in your nervous system and we're stuck in that place that it becomes really hard to move forward, right? We feel stuck. That's being in a frozen state, right? Whereas when you're present, when you are in this relaxed, rest, digest, regulated state, it's easier to feel a sense of relaxation. It's easier to feel a sense of well-being. It's easier to feel a sense of peace. And the thing is, if you're trying to heal your gut, as I've mentioned, it's really almost impossible, actually, to truly heal your gut if there's not some degree of nervous system regulation and healing of the triggers of what keeps you in a chronically dysregulated state. So, the thing that we can do, the most important thing we can then do, is actually adopt a healthier relationship with imperfection. Because when we adopt a healthier relationship with imperfection, we're actually adopting a healthier relationship with reality. Reality, yes, right? Because perfection is not reality. It has nothing to do with what's going on in your mind, has nothing to do with what's going on in your body, has nothing to do with what's going on right now. And this is part of actually what I teach in my framework for gut health mastery, is like most gut health approaches have nothing to do with what I call your stage of gut health. Because if you're doing quote unquote the right thing, you're eating the right diet or the right healthy foods, but you're in the wrong stage, like it doesn't align with what stage you're in right now, it's not going to help. Because there are stages where people may actually just need to rebuild their gut flora, for example. There's stages where people actually need to align their appetite with their meal times. You need to restore your appetite, because your appetite is a direct response of when your gut is ready to process. So if you're eating at times when you're not hungry, I mean, that could be a huge reason that there's a dysbiosis in your gut, that there's a lack of an ability to digest foods well. Because you're not eating at the right times, you're not eating with appetites. You're not regulating your appetite, right? So you could be doing certain things that outwardly seem healthy, look healthy, but they're not aligned with where you're at right now. And the thing is, healing, truly, as I mentioned, I think, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, it's a journey. Health is a journey. Health is not a state. Health is not a stuck, fixed place that you will just one day arrive and check, you've done it, baby. You're on vacation for the rest of your life. You've retired. You never have to lift a finger again. You never have to do anything. You've healed. Check, done. Right? Health is an ongoing journey because the human experience is an ongoing, evolutionary journey. So, creating a healthier relationship with imperfection, catching thoughts that are involving some standard, whether that's a standard for you or some standard for somebody else, right? And that could look like just judging somebody across the room. You don't know anything about that person. In fact, even thinking you know something about that person proves you know nothing about that person. Because all you're doing is applying some sort of filter of what you think, right, onto that person. Has everything to do with what's going on with you, nothing to do with what's going on with them. Nothing. No matter what's going on with them, has everything to do with what's going on with you, right? And that has everything to do with how you personally have this sense, this internalized sense of should, of morality, of right and wrong, which is, not to say that ethics are a bad thing, but when they're so deeply intertwined with perfection, it's never going to be healthy, ever, because it is literally dissociated from what is reality, what is actually going on. Okay, so I hope you're ready for the actual practical segment. This is when I'm going to give maybe 2 minutes of introduction to this practice, and then the practice itself will take between 3 and 5 minutes. Okay, so what we're practicing today is adding in several things. The first is actually going to be working with diaphragmatic breathing, but particularly by actually bringing your fingers together to get a felt sense of what's going on in your gut. The second thing we're adding in is a variation of something known within the yoga world as alternate nostril breathing. And this in particular has been proven. There's more and more studies that I was actually looking at earlier, which are fascinating, about how there's more studies about how alternate nostril breathing, inhaling one side, exhaling through the other, and then back again, how this actually regulates your nervous system. It's actually been so proven to regulate your nervous system that it's something that has been taught to first responders in countries like Canada and the United States because it regulates the nervous system so quickly. So in order to help us get into that rest and digest state, combining This alternate nostril breathing, plus having your hand coaxing your breath further down towards your belly, not staying stuck up here in the chest, is really fundamental. And then the third part is something known within the somatic world, so the world of processing feelings and healing trauma, something known as the felt sense. And that is just to stick with what you feel. It is literally to move out of the thinking mind of trying to make a story of what this is and going into the felt sense. What do I actually feel in this present moment? What's going on right now? So we'll combine these three. For the diaphragmatic breathing, you'll actually place your fingers like this into your belly button. Doesn't matter which hand, whichever one feels more comfortable. I don't know if you can see my belly button, right? But literally just pointing these into my belly button with the idea that when you inhale, you'll feel a gentle expansion of your belly towards your hand and a gentle contraction when you exhale. So many people who have held themselves to a standard of perfection disconnect totally from this area, or even have gotten used to sucking their belly in, and so they can never inhale and exhale fully because they're afraid their belly's gonna look too fat, right? So today, let your belly loose, relax your abdominal muscles so that your diaphragm can actually expand down fully. Then, for the other part of it, you'll actually close off the left nostril, inhale through the right, then you close the right and you exhale through the left. The last part of this is you inhale and exhale for equal parts. So I'll guide a count of 5. So you inhale for 5 seconds through the right, you close off the right, you exhale for 5 through the left. Then you close off the left and we keep going right to left. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this together. If you haven't taken a seat, go ahead and sit up. Sit up tall. Bring your fingers into your belly button. Close off your left nostril. Close your eyes. Inhale for a count of 5. 4, 3, 2, 1. Close off your right nostril. Exhale through your left nostril for a count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Close off your left nostril. Inhale through the right nostril for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Close your right nostril. Exhale through the left for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Close off the left nostril again. Inhale for 5 seconds through your right nostril, feeling the expansion around your fingertips of your hand in the belly. Close off the right nostril. Exhale through your left for 5 seconds, feeling your belly contract around your finger. Close left nostril. Inhale through right. Close off the right nostril. Exhale through left. Close off left nostril. Inhale through right. Close right nostril. Exhale left. Notice as you continue, if you get a sense of wanting to burp or release some gas or any gurgling in your stomach, close left nostril. Inhale right. Close the right nostril, exhale left. Close left, inhale right, 5 seconds. Close your right nostril, exhale left for 5 seconds. Practice 3 more rounds on your own, inhaling through the right, exhaling through the left, inhaling 5, exhaling 5. Get a sense for your rib cage lifting up, creating less weight on your organs, and an expansion around your belly. A softening of the gripping around your belly. Okay. Keep your hand in your belly button that's there. Bring your other hand now, bring all the 5 fingers together, and just rest it somewhere along your knee, your lap, or a table. Keep your eyes closed. Bring your whole body's awareness into your belly button and the fingers touching your belly button. Notice if you have any feelings of burning, of itching, of acidity. Maybe it feels waterlogged or heavy, swampy. Maybe it feels jittery or uncomfortable to focus on, or tense. Without necessarily having to describe it, just really focus for what are the feelings specifically right around your belly button. And then continue to breathe, inhaling 5 and exhaling 5, until you get a sense that your mouth salivates. You don't need to rush the body's process, but you will start to salivate at some point. Once you recognize there's salivation, release your fingers, rub your hands together, rubbing one like you were washing your hands. And then you can just make some massage here on the back of your neck. As I mentioned, also the front of the neck, this is where these nerves that run down to your diaphragm and your organs run. So even just a little bit of gentle massaging in this area can help reduce so much stress. I mean, who doesn't want like an upper shoulder and neck rub or like a foot rub, right? All of this has to do with those nerves getting a new sense of safety, relaxation, and care, self-care. If you noticed in that practice a little bit of salivation, that is actually a sign that you shifted into a rest and digest state, because salivation is part of your digestion response. So if you started to salivate during that short practice, you will notice and you will feel that maybe your gut feels a little more relaxed. Maybe you feel a little more relaxed. And all of that is a sign that you're actually shifting into a physiological response that will benefit both your nervous system regulation and also your digestive system. So I hope you enjoyed that practice. There's going to be a lot more of quick tips like that in the Gut Health Mastery course. And really, I mean, just to leave you with something to think about when it comes to healing from the inside out, is if you have any chronic digestive issues, whether that is actually a diagnosed condition like IBS, like SIBO or GERD, or you're just experiencing a lot of heaviness in your gut, you're experiencing constant bloating or indigestion, constipation on a regular basis, what feels like acidity or nausea or acid reflux, all of that is not just affecting your body, but it affects your mood, your energy levels, and your quality of life. And then we think about how many people try and approach fixing their problems, especially when it is a physical, symptom-based problem. Most people, I would just say 95% of people, generally want to reach for the quick fix. And this might even be you. I know it was me at different points in time, right? When I was struggling with headaches, okay, what's the easiest way? Just take a pill, right? So most of us are reaching for these quick fixes, like an over-the-counter medication, whether that's an antacid for acidity, or whether it's a laxative, or it's more fiber supplements for constipation, or whether it is some pill for your nausea or your abdominal cramps, right? These quick fixes, or even we can say swapping to the next new diet, the next new fad diet, trying to find again and again the perfect diet, right? There's that perfection once again, trying to find the perfect diet for you. All of these are how 95% of people try and approach solving their problems. Quick fixes, right? Who doesn't want just like a magic bullet? If I could just take one supplement and have the solution, done, right? But this addresses the symptoms and it never actually addresses the root causes. The problem with that is it leaves most people stuck in this cycle of temporary relief, but then followed by constantly recurring symptoms that never actually seem to get better. So the question then becomes, how are you ever going to actually get long-term relief and truly heal your gut and truly heal your nervous system, knowing those two things are combined and really dependent upon one another, if you only keep working at the level of symptoms without addressing the root cause that might actually have more to do with your stress, your habits, your mindset, or other things that I've mentioned, like actually aligning your diet with what your body needs, whether that is through your current stage of gut health, or whether that's through your metabolic type, and actually eating based on what your metabolism needs in order to be able to make its next leap into a healthier and stronger and more resilient state. So that's why I created Gut Health Mastery, was to be able to teach you a holistic approach to get gut health being a new stage of reality in your life, right? Becoming a gut health master means that you have mastered this holistic approach to heal your gut, combining nutrition, combining the latest science of habit change, combining things like stress management techniques so that you can finally heal yourself from the inside out, so that you can regain control over your health, over your life, and over your food choices, so that you don't have to feel like a prisoner to your body, to your symptoms, to your digestive discomfort, or a prisoner to food anymore. Because I myself know how difficult that is as a place to be. And I also know how beautiful it is to be on the other side of it. So we're gonna have 4 more days of these lives, sharing other fun and interesting topics. I have not gotten around to it just yet, but all of these are going up on YouTube, and I will be posting the links for all of these shortly in my stories so that you can come in and binge these, because honestly, these talks are not just about, popping in here and, talking about my day-to-day, but it's really all of the things that inspired me to create this program, popping open the hood of this program so that you can start to understand why these different factors are so important, and hopefully get some solutions, for your health journey as to what might actually be an important and essential next step for you in terms of your own healing, your own growth, and managing and working with your symptoms so that ideally you can actually find long-term and lasting relief. So with that, I will say goodbye for now, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Tune in for the next few days, and bye for now.